He was a powerful billionaire. Wealth, success, and betrayal had left him cold and broken. She was just a maid, invisible to the world, carrying dreams too big for her small paycheck. One night, a cruel misunderstanding brought them face to face, her dignity shattered, his arrogance exposed. But what neither of them knew, that very moment of humiliation would ignite a journey of redemption, courage, and a bond so powerful it would change their lives forever. The winter wind whipped through the avenues of Manhattan, rattling neon signs and swirling paper cups along the sidewalks. Inside the gleaming Astoria Grand Hotel, however, the world felt insulated. Warm chandeliers glittered overhead. Velvet carpets softened footsteps, and a low hum of violins floated from the grand ballroom. It was the kind of place where power was traded with handshakes, where fortunes were quietly made over champagne glasses. But down one level, beyond the gilded lobby and past a narrow door marked "Staff Only," another world existed. A narrow, dimly lit corridor lined with supply carts and mop buckets. Here, Emily Carter, a 23-year-old with tired brown eyes and a faint scar along her wrist from years of work, was on her knees scrubbing a marble tile. The sharp smell of bleach clung to her uniform. Her hands, though delicate, had grown calloused from endless hours at the beauty salon her mother ran back in Queens, and from the cleaning jobs she took on weekends. Emily's thoughts weren't on the floor, though. They were on the bills, stacked on her mother's kitchen counter. Electricity overdue, rent due in 3 days, college tuition balance. She inhaled shakily, brushing a strand of hair from her damp forehead. Tomorrow afternoon, she had her advanced accounting final, a make-or-break exam for her scholarship. Yet here she was, trading precious study hours for a mop. Her mother, Diana Carter, had begged her not to overwork. Diana was a woman with silver threading through her hair far earlier than her age demanded. She ran a tiny hair salon in a struggling neighborhood, always smelling faintly of hairspray and coffee. "Emily, you'll burn yourself out," she had said that morning, brushing her daughter's cheek with a mother's worry. But Emily had only smiled, hiding the truth. They were already drowning in debt. If she didn't take every opportunity, no matter how exhausting, they might lose, even the salon. So Emily had taken the night shift at the Astoria Grand, triple the pay for luxury events the agency had promised, enough to cover groceries and at least part of tuition. She told herself she could survive on caffeine and determination for one more day. At the same time, high above the streets of New York, Alexander Hayes leaned against the glass wall of his corner office in the Hayes Global Tower. The city stretched endlessly below, a grid of lights that pulsed like a living organism. Yet to him it felt hollow. Alex adjusted his cufflinks, habit more than necessity. At 40, he was one of America's most influential tech magnates, commanding a net worth that business magazines never failed to exaggerate. But none of it filled the cavern carved inside him. 7 months earlier, he had discovered his wife, Lauren, in the arms of Graham Miller, his best friend from college and co-founder of his company. That night had altered him. The betrayal had calcified his heart, turning warmth into suspicion. Every laugh felt false, every kindness seemed transactional. Even with his 8-year-old son Ethan, Alex struggled. Their bi-weekly visits were awkward, his boy's innocent questions piercing him in ways hostile boardrooms never could. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Hayes, the gala begins in 1 hour. Limousine will arrive shortly," he sighed. Another evening of forced smiles, another round of investors eager to dine on flattery. Still, he couldn't decline. The investment gala at the Astoria Grand wasn't just social fluff. It was where alliances were tested, where the future of million-dollar projects often shifted with the tone of a conversation. "Tell the driver I'll be ready," Alex said flatly, loosening his tie for just a moment before tightening it again. He cast one more glance at the photo frame turned face down on his desk. Slowly, deliberately, he picked it up. Ethan's freckled cheeks and wide grin stared back at him. "At least I still have you," he whispered. Hours later, black cars lined the hotel's crescent driveway. The red carpet gleamed under camera flashes as the elite stepped out, cloaked in designer fabrics. Inside, champagne towers sparkled. The ballroom buzzed with chatter about stocks, politics, and art auctions. Waiters in crisp white jackets weaved through the throngs with trays of canapes. Alex entered to the murmur of recognition. People turned. Some nodded respectfully. Others whispered. To them, he was the untouchable billionaire, the man who had turned a garage startup into a global empire. Alex returned nods with the polished detachment he had perfected. Inside, however, he felt nothing. Meanwhile, in the service hallways, Emily Carter adjusted the strap of her cleaning cart. Her supervisor's words still echoed, "Remember, you're ghosts here, invisible, seen only when something spills." Emily swallowed her pride. She had promised herself she would endure anything for her mother's sake, but as fate would have it, the world of glittering chandeliers and the world of mop buckets were about to collide. And when they did, both Emily Carter and Alexander Hayes would find their carefully built defenses crumbling in ways neither could have predicted. The ballroom of the Astoria Grand Hotel gleamed like a palace that night. Crystal chandeliers dripped golden light onto polished marble floors. A string quartet played softly in the corner, while servers glided between the glittering crowd, balancing silver trays of champagne flutes. The air buzzed with the low murmur of moneyed voices, laughter carefully measured, and the occasional burst of forced applause when a notable guest arrived. Alexander Hayes stood at the edge of the room, the weight of 1,000 eyes grazing him. He wore a tailored black tuxedo, Italian silk tie, and the familiar mask of indifference he had mastered since his divorce. Men clasped his hand with firmness. Women leaned in too close with air kisses and perfumed whispers. He responded politely, though his mind was far away, restless with memories that refused to fade. In truth, Alex hated these events. Every smile seemed rehearsed, every question a prelude to a business pitch. He knew that half the men shaking his hand would stab him in the back for the right deal, and half the women laughing at his dry jokes would never have given him a glance if he weren't Alexander Hayes. Billionaire CEO, but reputation was as important as profit in his world. He could not afford to show weakness, not tonight, not ever. While the powerful mingled beneath chandeliers, Emily Carter stood in a narrow service hallway just beyond the ballroom doors. Her beige hotel uniform fit awkwardly, its stiff fabric scratching at her skin. The cleaning cart rattled slightly as she pushed it into position, rubber wheels squeaking against the marble. Emily adjusted her gloves, glancing nervously at her supervisor, a man in his 50s with a perpetual frown etched deep into his face. "Remember, Carter," he muttered sharply, "you're not here to be noticed. Only step inside if there's a spill, and even then be quick. No talking, no eye contact with guests. Understand?" "Yes, sir," Emily answered softly. She had learned long ago how to make herself invisible when necessary. Tonight she would be a shadow, but shadows. Sometimes are caught in the spotlight. Inside the ballroom, a waiter barely older than Emily trembled as he carried a tray piled high with crystal flutes filled with golden champagne. His hand slipped. A sharp crash echoed through the hall. The music faltered. Glass shattered across the marble floor, champagne spreading in a glistening puddle at the feet of investors worth billions. Gasps rose from the crowd. Someone muttered, "Incompetent." Another whispered, "How unprofessional." The young waiter's face turned ashen. He stammered apologies, his hands trembling. Guests pulled back their gowns and polished shoes to avoid the spreading liquid. All eyes bore down on him in judgment. From the side hall, Emily's supervisor barked, "Now, Carter!" "Move!" Emily hurried forward, her cleaning cart rattling behind her. She knelt quickly, methodically gathering shards of glass, blotting up champagne with thick absorbent cloths. Her movements were fast yet graceful, born of practice and pride. To her, this wasn't humiliation. It was work. And work, however menial, deserved dignity. From across the ballroom, Alex Hayes watched. Something about the young maid caught his eye. Not her uniform, not even her face at first, but her poise. While the waiter shook with terror, she knelt calmly, as if refusing to let the room strip her of self-respect. Her head remained slightly lifted, her back straight despite her position on the floor. For a moment, Alex felt a flicker, something he hadn't felt in months. Recognition. She reminded him of himself at 19, when he had delivered packages in the biting cold of Chicago winters. Terrified of failure but too proud to let anyone see it. "Who's that girl?" Alex murmured to the man beside him. It was Richard Collins, a smug investor with a too-wide smile. Richard followed Alex's gaze, his lips curling. "Oh, that one? Don't be fooled. Girls like her aren't just maids. They're here for other purposes as well." He gave Alex a knowing wink. "A few extra dollars and they'll keep you company after the gala." Alex stiffened. His gut twisted, the old bitterness of betrayal rising. Could it be true? The thought clawed at him, ugly, poisonous. His eyes narrowed, watching Emily rise gracefully after finishing her task, pushing the cart back toward the service corridor. Richard chuckled, sipping his champagne. "If you want, I can introduce you later. Men like us don't need to clean up our own messes." Alex said nothing, but his jaw tightened. He wanted to dismiss Richard's words, but doubt had already slithered inside him. Ever since Lauren's affair, trust had become impossible. Every gesture felt false, every kindness suspect. Why would a girl like her be different? Minutes later, driven by a gnawing curiosity he couldn't name, Alex excused himself from Richard's chatter and slipped into the service hallway. The fluorescent lights here buzzed faintly, a stark contrast to the glittering ballroom. Emily stood by her cart, rearranging supplies with quick, practiced motions. She didn't notice him until his shadow stretched across the wall. Startled, she turned, her brown eyes widening as they landed on the most powerful man in the building. Mr. Hayes?" Her voice trembled slightly. She knew who he was, everyone did. His face had graced magazine covers for years. "Do you work here often?" Alex asked. His tone was cool, measured, though his eyes burned with scrutiny. Emily shook her head. "No, sir, just a temporary job. For extra income." Alex stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't need to pretend. I know why you're really here." Confusion flickered across her face. "Sir?" His words came out harsher than intended, poisoned by Richard's insinuation and his own distrust. "Tell me, how much for a night?" The silence that followed was deafening. Emily froze, her mouth falling open in shock. For a heartbeat, she couldn't even breathe. The insult hit her like a physical blow, burning her cheeks with humiliation. Her eyes filled, not with shame, but with fury. "Excuse me?" Her voice cracked but quickly hardened. "I'm a cleaner. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm here to pay for college, not to sell myself," Alex faltered, but his pride snapped back. He gave a humorless laugh. "Of course. And I'm supposed to believe that?" Emily's hands curled into fists. "A girl like me, right? That's what you were going to say." Her voice shook with rage. "Because girls like me, from the wrong neighborhood, wearing the wrong uniform, can't possibly be honest." Her words hung in the stale air, sharper than broken glass. For the first time in years, Alexander Hayes had no reply. For a brief moment, something vulnerable flickered across his face, doubt, maybe even shame. But it vanished as quickly as it came. "Apologies if I offended you," he muttered stiffly, and turned back toward the glittering ballroom. Emily stood frozen, heart pounding, fighting back tears. When he disappeared around the corner, she finally sank against the wall, burying her face in her gloved hands. She had endured condescension before. She had endured insults, but being mistaken for something she wasn't, by a man she had once admired, from magazine covers, it cut deeper than she expected. She whispered to herself, trembling, 5 minutes. I'll cry for 5 minutes, and then I'll finish this shift. Because that's what survivors did. They didn't break, they bent, they endured. Neither of them realized it yet, but the crack that had opened between them that night would become the very fault line along which both of their lives would shatter and eventually transform. The gala continued in full swing, but Alexander Hayes could hardly hear the music or the chatter anymore. He moved through the glittering crowd, glass of champagne untouched in his hand, his mind elsewhere, haunted by the look on the maid's face. Those eyes. Not the tear-filled humiliation, but the burning defiance that had cut straight through his armor. Alex tried to drown it with routine. He greeted old acquaintances, nodded at investors, even smiled at a few women who lingered too close. But every time he blinked, he saw her, kneeling with quiet dignity on the ballroom floor, then standing her ground in that service hallway, her words sharp as blades. A girl like me, right? Because girls like me can't possibly be honest. By midnight, the gala wound down. Guests slipped into their limousines, laughter spilling into the frosty night air. Alex's driver opened the door to the sleek black Bentley. "Home, sir?" Alex hesitated. The thought of returning to his sprawling empty penthouse, with its silent hallways and ghostly echoes of a marriage that had rotted, felt unbearable. "No," he said finally. "To the office." The Bentley slid through the streets of Manhattan, headlights glinting off wet asphalt. From the window, Alex watched the city blur past, streets pulsing with neon, bundled figures rushing toward subways, steam rising from manholes. He remembered when he had walked those same streets, with a folder of resumes under his arm, hoping someone would give him a chance. Somewhere along the way, he had forgotten what it felt like to beg for dignity. When he arrived at Hayes Global Tower, the building's security team straightened in surprise. "Evening, Mr. Hayes." They weren't used to seeing him at 1 in the morning. He took the elevator to the top floor. The office greeted him with cold silence. He poured himself a glass of 12-year-old scotch, though he barely tasted it, then sat at his desk and opened his laptop. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Finally, he logged into the Astoria Grand's private security feed, a privilege his company's investments in the hotel granted him. It took him minutes to find her. Emily Carter. He watched the footage from earlier, the champagne spill, her swift, precise movements as she knelt to clean, the way she ignored the whispers of wealthy guests who sneered down at her. Not once did she flinch or show anger. She carried herself with a quiet pride that unsettled him. Then he found the hallway recording. He saw himself confronting her, saw the fury in her eyes as she defended her dignity. He watched her rush to the bathroom and moments later emerge with red-rimmed eyes but squared shoulders. She had paused, adjusted her uniform, inhaled deeply, and returned to work as though nothing had happened. Alex froze the video. Her profile filled the screen, a young woman holding back tears, standing tall against humiliation. A lump formed in his throat, foreign and unwelcome. He set the glass of scotch down, untouched. What have I become? He thought bitterly. I've turned into the very men I despised when I was young, the ones who laughed at me, who dismissed me as a nobody, who assumed my worth was measured by my shoes or my suit. The more he replayed the footage, the deeper the guilt sank. He couldn't let it go. For hours, he sat at his desk, replaying the same 30 seconds over and over, as if searching for proof that he hadn't been wrong. But there was none. He had humiliated an innocent girl. Worse, a girl who reminded him of the boy he used to be. At 2:47 a.m., unable to stand it any longer, he pulled out his phone. He dialed a number few people knew. On the other end, a gravelly voice answered. "This better be important, Alex. It's the middle of the night. Franco, I need you to find someone," Alex said. Franco was a former private investigator who occasionally did discreet work for him. "Her name is Emily Carter. She works part-time at the Astoria Grand. She's a student. I want everything, background, address, family, discreetly," Franco grunted. "You falling in love, Hayes?" "Just find her," Alex snapped, harsher than intended. After a pause, his voice softened. "Please." By the time dawn broke over Manhattan, Alex hadn't slept. He sat slumped in his chair, eyes bloodshot, watching the sun ignite the skyline in shades of gold. At precisely 10:14 a.m., his phone pinged. Franco's email had arrived. Confidential report subject, Emily Carter. Alex opened it. His hands trembling slightly, age 23. Mother, Diana Carter. Owner of a small hair salon in Queens. Father, deceased. Education, 6th semester. NYU Stern School of Business, partial scholarship. Works part-time cleaning shifts, helps at mother's salon. No debts. No criminal record. Character references. Hardworking, respectful, reserved. Attached was a photo Franco had quietly pulled from social media. Emily smiling faintly while styling an older woman's hair at the salon. Her eyes shone with warmth, utterly different from the fury he had witnessed last night. Alex sat back, his chest tight. The report confirmed what the video had already told him. She wasn't what he thought. She was real, honest, fighting for survival in a city that chewed people up and spat them out. He remembered the words she had flung at him. Because girls like me can't possibly be honest. For the first time in years, Alexander Hayes felt ashamed. He wasn't just ashamed of how he had treated her, but of how far he had fallen from the boy who once ran deliveries in freezing snow, desperate to prove himself. By the afternoon, Alex had made up his mind. He wouldn't just send flowers or money. It would be too easy, too insulting. No, he would face her, apologize to her, and perhaps, if she allowed it, make amends in a way that meant something. At 2:30 p.m., his black Mercedes pulled up in front of a modest block of shops in Queens. A cracked sign above one narrow storefront read, "Diana's Beauty and Cuts." The paint was peeling. The window was smudged, but inside Alex could see warmth, laughter between women, the faint smell of shampoo and coffee drifting out the door. He stepped out of the car, adjusting his suit. For once, he felt overdressed, absurdly out of place. People on the sidewalk stopped to stare, whispering at the sight of a billionaire in their humble neighborhood. Alex ignored them, his heart pounding. The tiny bell above the salon door jingled as he pushed it open. Conversation froze. 3 elderly women waiting for appointments stared at him, eyes wide. Behind the counter, a woman in her 50s with kind, tired eyes looked up in shock. "Diana Carter." "May I help you?" she asked cautiously. Before Alex could respond, Emily emerged from the back, a bundle of fresh towels in her arms. She froze when she saw him. The towels slipped from her grasp, landing silently on the floor. Her face drained of color, then flushed crimson. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, her voice sharp with disbelief. Every gaze in the salon swung between them. The air grew thick, charged with tension. Alex cleared his throat, lowering his voice. "I came to apologize. May we speak privately?" Emily's jaw tightened. Her eyes flicked to her mother, who gave the smallest, most reluctant nod. After a long pause, Emily exhaled and jerked her head toward the back room. 5 minutes, she said coldly. And with that, she led him into a cramped office that smelled faintly of hairspray and old coffee, slamming the door behind them. For the first time in years, the billionaire felt like a schoolboy standing before judgment. And for the first time in years, he didn't want to win. He only wanted forgiveness. The little office at the back of the Queen's beauty salon felt unbearably small. A second-hand desk was shoved against one wall, an old corkboard cluttered with pinned magazine clippings on another. The smell of perm solution clung stubbornly to the air, mixed with faint traces of lavender shampoo. Emily Carter stood with her arms crossed, blocking the door, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Alexander Hayes, a man accustomed to dominating boardrooms and commanding respect, felt curiously awkward. His $6,000 Italian suit suddenly seemed like armor that didn't fit. He cleared his throat. "I shouldn't have come unannounced," he began, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "But I couldn't leave things the way they are." Emily narrowed her eyes. "You humiliated me, Mr. Hayes, in front of people I work with. In front of myself." Her voice cracked on the last word, though she tried to hide it. She remembered vividly the way he had looked at her in that corridor, his eyes filled with cold suspicion. The sting of his words, "How much for a night?" still echoed in her head. Alex lowered his gaze for a moment, something he rarely did. "You're right. I was cruel, unjust, and I hate myself for it." Emily blinked, startled by the honesty in his tone. For a second, her anger faltered, replaced by confusion. She had expected arrogance, excuses, perhaps even money shoved across the table. "But not this. I don't need your pity," she said sharply, regaining her composure. "And I definitely don't need a billionaire barging into my life as if you can fix things with an apology." Alex's jaw tightened. He had anticipated resistance, but the steel in her voice shook him. "I'm not here to pity you. I'm here because—" He hesitated, words catching in his throat. Vulnerability didn't come easily to him. "Because I saw something in you last night that I haven't seen in years. Dignity. Even when I tried to strip it from you, you held on. And it reminded me of who I used to be." Emily's arms loosened slightly, though she still glared at him. "Who you used to be?" "Yes." He allowed himself to pace the small room, running a hand through his hair. "There was a time when I was the kid on the floor, delivering packages in the snow, scrubbing offices just to pay tuition. People looked at me the way I looked at you last night, like I was less than them. And I swore I'd never become one of them. But I did." Silence stretched between them. Emily studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation. Instead, she saw exhaustion. Shadows under his eyes, the tightness in his mouth. This wasn't the polished titan from magazine covers. This was a man fraying at the edges. Her voice softened, though just slightly. "Then why say what you said? Why assume the worst?" Alex turned toward her, his expression pained. "Because I've been betrayed, Emily. By people I trusted most, my wife, my closest friend. That betrayal twisted me. Now I see lies in every smile, deception in every kindness. And I projected that onto you. That was wrong." Emily's throat tightened. Against her will, she felt a flicker of sympathy. She knew betrayal too, though of a different kind. Friends who had abandoned her when she couldn't afford the same clothes, teachers who assumed she wasn't worth the effort, relatives who disappeared after her father's funeral. But sympathy wasn't forgiveness. She crossed her arms again, more defensively this time. "So you humiliate me because your wife cheated on you. That's your excuse." Alex shook his head quickly. "No, it's not an excuse. It's context. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I couldn't live with myself if I didn't at least try to make this right." From his inner pocket, he pulled out a sleek business card and placed it gently on the desk between them. Hayes Global runs an internship program. Paid, competitive. It's designed for students like you. You'd gain real experience. You'd be seen for your abilities, not your uniform. Emily stared at the card as though it were radioactive. Slowly, she picked it up, running her thumb over the embossed letters. It was an open door to the world she had dreamed of, corporate halls, tailored suits, a chance to build something bigger than survival. But then her gaze snapped back to him, sharp again. "Is this guilt money? A way to clear your conscience?" No, his reply was immediate, firm. "It's not charity. It's opportunity. I saw how you worked last night, efficient, focused, unshaken by humiliation. Those are qualities I'd hire in a heartbeat, no matter where they come from." Emily let out a bitter laugh. "Funny, yesterday I was just a maid to you. Today I'm a potential asset." Alex flinched. He deserved that. He knew it. "You're right," he admitted. "And I wish I could take back every word I said. But I can't. What I can do is give you this chance. No strings attached. No hidden agenda." For the first time, he lifted his gaze fully to meet hers. His blue eyes, usually so cold, held something raw, something almost pleading. "Whether you accept it or not, I needed you to know I was wrong." Emily's pulse raced. 1,000 thoughts warred in her mind. Her pride screamed to throw the card back in his face, to order him out and slam the door. But another voice whispered of tuition bills, her mother's tired eyes. The endless nights of cleaning floors when she should be studying. Her fingers tightened on the card. "You said 5 minutes," she muttered, moving toward the door. "Your time's up." Alex nodded, accepting her dismissal. He stepped aside, his face unreadable. As he reached for the door, Emily's mother appeared, pretending to rearrange supplies, but clearly eavesdropping. Her eyes flicked between them, sharp and knowing. "Mr. Hayes," Diana said carefully, "my daughter has admired your work for years. She's got clippings of your articles on her wall." Emily spun around, mortified. "Mom!" But Alex froze. Something warm flickered in his chest at Diana's words. He turned back to Emily, a ghost of a smile tugging at his lips. Then maybe this card isn't such an insult after all." Emily's cheeks burned. She shoved the card into her pocket, glaring at him. "Don't read too much into it." Alex inclined his head. "Of course." His tone was respectful now, almost deferential. He pushed open the door, pausing only once. "Whatever you decide, Miss Carter. I'll respect it." And then he was gone, leaving Emily trembling with anger, confusion, and something she refused to name. That night, long after the salon closed and the streets quieted, Emily sat at the kitchen table, staring at the card. The embossed letters caught the dim light of the lamp. Hayes Global Technologies. Her mother poured her tea and sat across from her. "What are you going to do, sweetheart?" Emily sighed, pressing the card flat against the table. "I don't trust him, but this is the opportunity I've been dreaming of. If I say no, I might regret it forever. If I say yes, I might regret it even more." Diana reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Sometimes, Emily, doors don't open twice. Only you can decide if you're ready to walk through." Emily stared at the card until her vision blurred. For the first time in years, she felt torn between her pride and her future. And in that quiet kitchen in Queens, she realized her life was about to change, whether she wanted it to or not. The following week unfolded like a storm Emily Carter couldn't control. The little white business card seemed to burn a hole in her pocket everywhere she went. At the salon, in class, even on the subway. She had tried to ignore it, shove it in a drawer, but her mother's words wouldn't leave her mind. Sometimes doors don't open twice. On Tuesday morning, after a sleepless night, she sat in the NYU library staring at her laptop. An email draft glowed on the screen. Subject: internship application, Emily Carter, to internship@hayesglobal.com. Her fingers hovered over the send button. Fear clawed at her chest. What if it was all a trap? What if Alex Hayes had offered it only to soothe his guilt, and she would be humiliated again? But then she thought of the scholarship office that had warned her last week. If your GPA drops this semester, your funding will not be renewed. Her GPA hung by a thread, pulled down by exhaustion from working too many jobs. If she lost the scholarship, her dream of graduating would collapse. The internship could not only pay decently, it could secure her future. With a deep breath, Emily hit send. 3 days later, she found herself standing before the gleaming glass doors of Hayes Global Tower in Midtown Manhattan. The skyscraper loomed into the sky like a blade, its polished surface reflecting the clouds. People in tailored suits streamed in and out, badges clipped to their belts, coffee cups in hand. Emily swallowed hard, adjusting the only blazer she owned, a thrift store purchase that didn't quite fit her shoulders. She had tied her hair back, dabbed on lipstick, and clutched a folder with her resume and transcripts inside. Her legs felt like jelly. At the front desk, a receptionist greeted her with a polished smile. "Miss Carter? Mr. Hayes's office is expecting you. Take the elevator to the 54th floor." Emily's heart leapt into her throat. She hadn't expected to meet him today. She thought she would only see HR, maybe a recruiter. The elevator doors whispered shut, enclosing her in silence. As the numbers climbed higher, 30, 31, 32, she gripped the handrail, trying to steady her breathing. By the time the elevator dinged at the 54th, her palms were slick with sweat. The executive floor of Hayes Global was like stepping into another world. Polished walnut floors gleamed beneath soft lighting. Abstract paintings worth more than her entire tuition lined the walls. Assistants moved briskly with tablets in hand. At the far end, glass doors bore the name Alexander Hayes, Chief Executive Officer. Emily's heels clicked softly as she approached. The assistant outside the office, an elegant woman named Cecilia, gave her a once-over that made Emily painfully aware of her thrift store blazer. Still, Cecilia's tone was professional. "Go right in. He's waiting." Emily pushed the doors open. The office was vast, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Behind a sleek mahogany desk sat Alex Hayes himself. No tuxedo now, just a crisp white shirt with rolled sleeves, tie loosened. He looked up from a file, and for a moment his guarded mask slipped. Surprise, maybe even relief, flickered in his eyes. "Miss Carter," he said, standing. His voice was softer than the night at the hotel. "Thank you for coming." Emily stood stiffly, clutching her folder. "I wasn't sure I should." "I know." He gestured toward a chair across from his desk. "Please sit," she did cautiously. He resumed his seat, folding his hands. "I want to be clear. If you join Hayes Global, you'll be treated like any other intern. No favoritism, no shadow deals. You'll have to earn your place here. Is that understood?" Emily bristled. "That's all I want." A faint smile tugged at his lips. "Good, because you'll be working under Marcelo Alvarez, our head of corporate strategy. He doesn't tolerate laziness. If you can survive him, you can survive anything." She nodded, though her stomach twisted. Then Alex leaned forward slightly. His voice dropped, almost tentative. "I also want to say again, Emily, I'm sorry. For everything I said that night, I don't expect you to forgive me now or ever. But I hope one day you'll understand I was speaking from my scars, not from truth." Emily's throat tightened. She looked away, out the window at the sprawling city below. "I'm not here for apologies, Mr. Hayes. I'm here for opportunity." Her tone was firm, but her heart beat wildly. She hated that his words still stirred something inside her, a dangerous mixture of resentment and reluctant respect. Alex inclined his head. "Fair enough." The following weeks tested Emily more than she had imagined. Hayes Global's internship program was grueling. From early mornings to late nights, she drafted reports, analyzed financial data, and endured Marcelo's sharp critiques. Many interns crumbled under the pressure. Emily refused to. Every night, she returned home exhausted, but she studied harder, determined not to fail either her classes or her job. What surprised her most was Alex himself. She rarely saw him directly, but when she did, he was different from the man in the hallway that night. In meetings, he was decisive but never cruel. When he passed her desk, he sometimes paused, not to belittle but to ask, "How's the workload?" in a tone that carried genuine concern. Once, late one evening, Emily was still at her desk, eyes heavy, surrounded by stacks of reports. She hadn't noticed Alex standing by the glass wall until he spoke quietly. "You remind me of myself at your age." Emily startled, looking up. "Working late?" she asked. He chuckled softly. "Always. But unlike you, I didn't have anyone waiting at home to tell me to rest." Emily hesitated, then said, "I do it for my mom. She sacrificed everything for me." Something in his face softened, a shadow of longing flickering across his eyes. "Cherish that. You don't realize how rare it is until it's gone." For a long moment, silence hung between them, the city lights flickering outside. Then Alex nodded once and left her to her work. Despite her pride, Emily found herself slowly re-evaluating him. He was still a billionaire, still part of a world she would never fully belong to. But he wasn't the monster she had painted in her mind. He carried wounds, shadows, and perhaps, just perhaps, the same hunger for redemption she carried. One Friday evening, weeks later, Marcelo handed her a project too big for one intern. "You'll prepare the quarterly report on sustainability partnerships. Presentation next Monday. If you fail, you're out." Emily nearly panicked. It was the kind of assignment that seasoned analysts dreaded. She spent the weekend buried in research, falling asleep over spreadsheets, skipping meals. On Sunday night, with bloodshot eyes and trembling fingers, she realized she wouldn't finish in time. At 11:42 p.m., a message pinged on her Hayes Global email. From Alexander Hayes, subject, "Report assistance. I reviewed Marcelo's assignment. It's beyond the scope of an intern. If you'd like guidance, my office light is still on." Emily stared at the message, torn. Accepting his help felt dangerous, like stepping into quicksand. But rejecting it might cost her future. She gathered her files and walked to the 54th floor. Inside, Alex sat at his desk, tie discarded, shirt sleeves rolled, reviewing documents. He looked up, surprised but not displeased. "I was hoping you'd come." For the next 3 hours, Billionaire and Maid turned intern sat side by side, dissecting data, building charts, sharpening arguments. Alex explained concepts with patience, even humor. Emily challenged his assumptions, earning the occasional smirk. For the first time, they weren't adversaries. They were something else. At 3:07 a.m., the report was done. Emily slumped back in her chair, exhausted but exhilarated. "I didn't think I could do it." Alex studied her, admiration clear in his eyes. "Emily, you don't just survive. You rise," her heart skipped. She looked away quickly, gathering her papers. "Good night, Mr. Hayes." As she left, Alex watched her go, a realization settling heavy in his chest. She wasn't just an intern. She was the storm he hadn't seen coming, the storm that might finally break through the walls he had built around his heart. Monday morning arrived with the kind of nervous energy that crackled in the air like static. The boardroom at Hayes Global Tower was already buzzing when Emily Carter stepped inside, clutching her laptop and a neatly bound report. The room was vast, with a long glass table stretching like a runway. Around it sat some of the most powerful executives in the company, their suits sharp, their gazes sharper. At the head of the table sat Alexander Hayes. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes flickered briefly toward Emily as she entered. It wasn't the cold scrutiny of that night at the Astoria Grand. It was something else, quiet encouragement, carefully concealed behind a mask of professionalism. Marcelo Alvarez, the corporate strategist who had assigned her the impossible project, leaned back in his chair with a smirk. "Well, Ms. Carter, let's see if you can prove you're more than just an intern." Emily's hands trembled as she connected her laptop to the projector. The screen lit up with her first slide, Hayes Global, Sustainability Partnerships, a strategic review. She inhaled deeply, remembering her mother's words, remembering Alex's late-night guidance. "You don't just survive. You rise," and then she began. At first her voice wavered, but as the minutes passed, confidence took hold. She presented charts that revealed inefficiencies others had missed, proposed partnerships with smaller firms that could expand Hayes Global's reach, and highlighted community programs that would strengthen the company's public image. Her arguments were clear, her analysis thorough. Executives leaned forward, whispering to each other. Marcelo's smirk slowly faded. When Emily finished, she clicked to the final slide, "Profit with Purpose," and let her words hang in the air. Silence followed. For a terrifying moment, she thought she had failed. Then applause. It started with one executive, then another, until half the room was clapping. Emily's chest tightened with disbelief. She had done it. Marcelo cleared his throat, forcing a smile. Impressive for an intern, but let's not pretend she did this alone. His eyes flicked to Alex, his voice dripping with implication. Perhaps she had guidance. A murmur rippled through the room. Emily flushed, panic rising. Would all her work be dismissed as favoritism? But Alex's voice cut through, calm, yet firm. Guidance doesn't write a report, Marcelo. Guidance doesn't deliver a flawless presentation. Emily Carter earned this. Every word of it. The room quieted. Marcelo's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. For the first time, Emily saw Alex not as the man who had humiliated her, not as the billionaire she distrusted, but as someone willing to stand for her when it mattered. The realization unsettled her. Later that evening, after the executives had dispersed and the report was already circulating through company channels, Emily stood by the window of the 54th floor. The city glowed beneath her, a sea of light stretching into forever. She pressed her forehead against the glass, her breath fogging it slightly. Behind her, the door opened softly. Alex's reflection appeared in the glass beside hers. "You were extraordinary today," he said quietly. Emily turned, her voice low. "I wasn't sure I could do it. You did more than do it. You made them see what I saw." His gaze lingered on her, filled with something unspoken, respect, admiration, perhaps something more dangerous. Emily looked away, her heart pounding. "Don't put me on a pedestal, Mr. Hayes. I'm just trying to survive." He stepped closer, not menacing, but steady. "You're not just surviving, Emily. You're shaping a future. For yourself. For this company. And maybe..." His voice faltered, rare vulnerability cracking through. "For me too." Silence stretched between them, charged and fragile. Emily shook her head, forcing a small laugh. "You're a billionaire CEO. I'm a maid who got lucky. Our worlds don't mix." Alex's eyes softened. "That's what I used to think. Until you reminded me where I came from. Until you reminded me what I lost." Her breath caught. She wanted to push him away, to remind herself of his arrogance, his cruelty that night. But another part of her, the part that had watched him work tirelessly at 3 in the morning, the part that had seen the pain in his eyes when he spoke of betrayal, hesitated. She gathered her things, breaking the moment. "I should go." "My mother's waiting." Alex didn't stop her. He only nodded, watching her leave, his chest heavy with something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Over the following months, Emily's internship blossomed into something more. She spearheaded projects that caught media attention, her name appearing in industry blogs. Executives who had once dismissed her now sought her input. And through it all, Alex watched from a careful distance, guiding, protecting, but never overstepping, yet rumors began to swirl. Whispers in the office corridors, insinuations that her rise was tied to the CEO's interest. Emily heard them, felt their sting. She confronted Alex, once furious. "Do you know what they're saying? That I'm here because of you, not because I earned it." Alex's face hardened. "Then let them talk. The truth will outlast gossip." But Emily's voice cracked. "Easy for you to say. You have power. I only have my name." Her words haunted him. That night he made a decision. If protecting her meant stepping back, he would. If giving her freedom meant suppressing his growing feelings, he would do that too. Because Emily Carter wasn't just another intern. She was the living reminder of the man he once was, and the man he still longed to be. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun bled red over the Hudson, Alex stood by his office window. He watched the city pulse below, but his thoughts were on her, always on her. He whispered into the glass, almost like a prayer. "She came into my life to remind me what matters, from tears to triumph." And somewhere across the city, Emily sat at her mother's kitchen table, staring at her Hayes Global ID badge. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing: her story had only just begun. The first snow of winter dusted Manhattan like powdered sugar. Streets glistened under street lamps, taxis hissed across slush, and office towers glowed against the darkening sky. Inside Hayes Global headquarters, the atmosphere was less festive. Rumors had begun to harden into accusations. Emily Carter walked into the lobby that morning and immediately felt the weight of stares. 2 interns whispered near the elevators. A senior associate smirked as she passed. It was no longer just gossip, it was malice, sharpened by envy. By the time she reached her cubicle, an anonymous note was waiting on her desk. Scribbled in bold black marker, "Everyone knows why you're here." Her stomach dropped. She crumpled the paper in her fist, but the words burned into her. Later that day, Emily was called into the office of Victor Stanton, the company's chief legal officer. A stern man in his 50s with rimless glasses, Victor rarely wasted words. "Miss Carter," he began, folding his hands. "I'll be blunt. Allegations have surfaced about favoritism. A conflict of interest involving you and Mr. Hayes." Emily's pulse hammered. "That's not true. Your work is impressive," Victor cut in. "But perception matters as much as reality in a publicly traded company. Investors are watching. If these rumors grow, it could damage Hayes Global." Emily felt her throat tighten. "So, what are you saying? That I should quit?" Victor didn't answer directly. "I'm saying the board will act to protect this company. Whether you remain here depends on how this situation is handled." When Emily left his office, her legs felt unsteady. She wanted to scream, to cry, but she knew tears would only confirm what they already thought, that she was fragile, undeserving. That night she sat at the small kitchen table in Queens with her mother. Diana, the steam from their chicken soup fogged the cracked window glass. "They think I don't belong there, Mom," Emily whispered. "They think I slept my way into success." Diana reached across the table, taking her daughter's hand. "Emily, people will always talk when you rise above them. Let them choke on their envy. You know who you are, and so do I." Emily tried to smile, but the pain in her chest was heavy. Meanwhile, Alexander Hayes was in his penthouse overlooking Central Park, staring at a report on his laptop. It wasn't about profits or mergers. It was a confidential memo from the legal department recommending Emily's termination to protect corporate integrity. Alex slammed the laptop shut, pacing the room. His reflection in the glass windows mocked him, the powerful CEO who couldn't even protect the one person who had reminded him what it meant to believe again. "They're punishing her for my mistakes," he thought bitterly. The next morning he strode into the boardroom, determination etched into every line of his face. The directors shifted uneasily as he laid a folder on the table. "You're all worried about perception," he said, voice controlled but steely. "Then let's change it. Emily Carter will no longer report to me. Effective immediately, she answers to the board, and every decision regarding her projects will be overseen independently." One director frowned. "Alex, this isn't just about structure. It's about appearances." Alex leaned forward, eyes blazing. "Appearances can be managed. Integrity is proven by action. She's done more for our social initiatives in 3 months than some of you have in 3 years. Fire her, and you'll prove to the world that Hayes Global punishes talent and rewards gossip. Keep her, and you prove we recognize merit, not rumors." The room fell silent. Even Victor, the legal officer, had no immediate reply. When Emily arrived that afternoon, she was summoned, not to be fired, but to a meeting where Alex formally announced the change in her reporting line. She would now work directly under a committee of directors, independent from his office. The board's eyes were on her, evaluating, testing. Emily straightened her back and met their gaze with quiet defiance. She would not break. As the meeting adjourned, Alex caught her outside the door. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he murmured low enough only she could hear, "I won't let them destroy what you've built." Her chest tightened. She wanted to thank him, to admit how much it meant, but pride held her tongue. Instead, she gave a small nod and walked away, her heels clicking against the marble floor. In the weeks that followed, Emily poured herself into her work with even more intensity. The Community Tech Incubator project, her brainchild, began moving from paper to reality. She spent evenings in neighborhoods most executives had never set foot in, meeting young people brimming with ideas but starved of resources. She listened to their stories, a teenager coding apps on a cracked phone, a single mother teaching herself graphic design at night, a veteran building drones in his garage. Emily saw herself in all of them, overlooked, underestimated, yet burning with potential, and as she fought for funding, for staff, for every dollar to make the incubator real, the whispers at headquarters began to fade. Slowly, grudgingly, even her detractors couldn't ignore the results. One night, as winter storms raged outside, Emily stayed late at the office, buried in spreadsheets. When she finally looked up, the building was nearly empty. Only one light glowed across the floor, Alex's office. For a long moment she debated. Then she walked to his door and knocked softly. "Come in," he said. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly disheveled, his eyes tired. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a man weighed down by too many battles. "You should go home," Alex told her gently. Emily hesitated, then replied, "So should you." Their eyes locked. For once, there were no masks, no corporate roles, no walls. Just two people, bruised by life in different ways, standing on the edge of something they couldn't yet name. And in that silence, with snow swirling against the glass behind them, both understood their fight wasn't just against rumors or board politics. It was against the emptiness that had ruled their lives too long. Something deeper had begun, something neither of them could ignore. The biting chill of January swept across New York City, but inside the modest community center in Brooklyn, warmth buzzed like electricity. Rows of folding chairs had been set up beneath strings of donated lights, and a banner, hand-painted by local teenagers, read, "Hayes Global Community Tech Incubator, Opening Day." Emily Carter stood near the front, her clipboard pressed tightly against her chest. Her nerves were sharper than they'd ever been, sharper even than before her accounting exams. She had spent months fighting tooth and nail for this moment, convincing skeptical directors, begging for additional funds, and personally visiting neighborhoods to recruit participants. Now, dozens of young people, kids who reminded her of herself, waited eagerly. clutching notebooks, laptops, even scraps of paper scribbled with ideas. At the back of the room, Alexander Hayes stood in a tailored overcoat, his presence commanding as always, but his expression softer. This was different from boardrooms or cocktail parties. Here he wasn't the billionaire CEO, but a man watching something take root, something bigger than profit margins. The ceremony began with brief speeches. Local council members praised the program. Parents wiped tears from their eyes. And then it was Emily's turn. She stepped to the podium, her voice trembling at first, but gaining strength as she spoke. "When I was growing up," she began, "I used to study by the light of a broken lamp in my mom's salon. I dreamed of working in offices with glass windows and polished desks, but I didn't know if someone like me would ever get the chance. Today, this incubator is about giving you that chance. Not because you were born into privilege, but because your ideas matter. Because you matter." Her words filled the room with quiet intensity. The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was thunderous, heartfelt. Alex found himself clapping harder than anyone, pride swelling in his chest. But more than pride, there was something else, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Hope. After the ribbon cutting, kids flooded into the computer lab, exploring the new laptops and 3D printers. Emily circulated, answering questions, offering encouragement. At one corner table, a boy of about 8 sat quietly, sketching dinosaurs in a notebook. Emily crouched down. "Hey there, what's your name?" The boy looked up with piercing blue eyes she recognized immediately from the photo on Alex's desk. "Ethan," he said. Emily froze for a moment. "You like dinosaurs?" she asked softly. Ethan's face lit up. "They're my favorite." "Did you know the Spinosaurus was bigger than a T-Rex and could swim?" Emily smiled, utterly charmed. "I didn't know that. You'll have to teach me more." Behind them, Alex had walked over. His expression was unreadable, but his voice was warm. "Ethan, this is Emily. She's the reason this place exists." The boy's gaze flicked between them. "She's the one you told me about." Emily blinked, surprised, as Alex shifted uncomfortably. "Sue might have mentioned her," he admitted. Ethan grinned and tugged Emily's hand. "Then she has to come to the museum with us. Dad promised to take me to see the dinosaur exhibit." Emily laughed nervously. "I wouldn't want to intrude," but Alex, for once, didn't hide behind caution. "You wouldn't be intruding." His eyes held hers for a beat too long, and something passed between them, unspoken but undeniable. Over the next weeks, Emily and Ethan's bond grew naturally. She visited the incubator daily, often finding Ethan tagging along with his father, a small shadow with boundless curiosity. Emily never spoke to Alex about it, but she sensed he wanted Ethan to have someone positive in his life, someone who wasn't caught up in betrayal and bitterness. One Saturday, they did go to the American Museum of Natural History together. Emily found herself holding Ethan's hand as he explained each fossil with more authority than the guides. Alex walked beside them, quieter than usual, watching the scene with an intensity that unsettled her. When Ethan dashed ahead to see the T-Rex skeleton, Emily finally whispered, "You shouldn't do this." "Do what?" Alex asked. "Let him get attached. To me, it's not safe. If people already think I only have this job because of you, what will they say if they see me with your son?" Alex's jaw tightened. "They'll say what they always say. People thrive on tearing others down. But I don't care. And maybe," he hesitated, "maybe Ethan needs someone like you in his life." Emily's chest ached. She wanted to say she needed them too, but the words stuck. At the office, however, the atmosphere was darker. The success of Emily's incubator project had begun attracting media coverage. A glowing feature in the New York Times had called it a rare case where corporate social responsibility wasn't just window dressing, but with the praise came backlash. Anonymous blogs accused Emily of being a gold digger. A tabloid ran a blurry photo of her and Alex at the museum with Ethan under the headline, "CEO's New Family." The board was furious. One director stormed into Alex's office, slamming the newspaper onto his desk. "This is reckless, Alex. The company can't afford a scandal." Investors are already nervous. Alex's reply was cold, measured. The company will survive. What it can't afford is to lose its integrity. Emily has earned everything she has here, the director sneered. People don't care about her resume. They care about optics. And right now, the optics are terrible. That night, Emily sat awake at her mother's kitchen table, scrolling through cruel headlines on her phone. Her chest felt like it was caving in. She had sacrificed sleep, health, even her youth for this chance, and now strangers who didn't know her story were reducing her to a stereotype. Her mother tried to take the phone away. "Stop reading that poison," Diana urged. "They don't see your truth," but Emily whispered, "What if they're right? What if I'm just a mistake in his world?" Unbeknownst to her, Alex was pacing his penthouse the same night, wrestling with the same storm. For the first time in years, he felt something real, something worth risking everything for. And he wasn't sure if he had the courage to fight for it. The following Monday, an emergency board meeting was called. Word had spread that investors wanted answers. As Emily walked into headquarters, whispers rippled behind her. She kept her chin high, but inside she was shaking. When the meeting began, Victor Stanton, the legal officer, laid it out bluntly. "We cannot ignore this. Either Ms. Carter resigns voluntarily, or we face a shareholder revolt." Emily felt her heart stop. She opened her mouth, but Alex spoke first. His voice cut through the air like a blade. "Then let them revolt. I will not let this company destroy the only person here brave enough to tell us the truth about ourselves." Gasps filled the room. For the first time in her life, Emily saw a man willing to risk everything, not for power, not for money, but for her. And in that moment, she realized their story was no longer just about survival. It was about defiance, about rewriting what was possible, not just for them, but for everyone watching. The boardroom at Hayes Global had never been so tense. The mahogany table stretched like a battlefield, with directors on one side, lawyers on another, and at the head sat Alexander Hayes, face carved from stone. At his right, trembling but unbroken, sat Emily Carter, the young woman whose presence had split the company in two. Victor Stanton, the legal chief, spoke first, his tone clipped. "Alex, this is untenable. The press is circling. Investors are demanding explanations. Either Ms. Carter steps down or—" He hesitated, glancing at the others. "Or your leadership itself will be questioned." The words hung in the air like a knife. Emily's pulse pounded in her ears. She had walked into this company to prove herself, not to be the reason its empire cracked. "I'll resign," she blurted suddenly, her voice shaking but firm. Gasps spread around the table. "If my presence damages Hayes Global, then I'll go. My work will speak for itself someday, elsewhere." Alex slammed his palm against the table, startling everyone. "No, you won't." His blue eyes blazed with a fury that silenced the room. "You don't fire talent because of gossip. You don't destroy integrity for convenience. If this board wants her gone, then you'll have to remove me too." The room erupted. Half the directors shouted in disbelief. Others whispered nervously. Stocks, control, headlines. Their empire trembled. Emily turned to Alex, whispering desperately, "Don't do this. Don't throw away your career for me." But Alex leaned closer, his voice low, steady. "You don't understand. You're the only real thing in my life. I won't lose that. Not again." That evening, news of the boardroom clash leaked to the press. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire defies, board to defend, Maid turned executive, Hayes risks fortune over controversial protégé." Reporters camped outside Hayes Global headquarters. Paparazzi staked out Emily's neighborhood. Neighbors whispered when she walked past. Diana Carter, her mother, urged her to stay strong. But the pressure was crushing. One night, as Emily slipped into the community center after hours to escape the chaos, she found Ethan sitting alone at a desk, coloring dinosaurs. "Hey, Professor," she said softly. Trying to smile, Ethan looked up, serious beyond his years. "They're saying bad things about you on TV. Dad's mad all the time." "Is it my fault?" "Because I asked him to bring you to the museum." Emily's throat tightened. She crouched to meet his eyes. "No, sweetheart. None of this is your fault. Do you hear me? You're the best thing in your dad's life and mine." Ethan's small arms wrapped around her neck, clinging fiercely. "Then don't leave us, please." Tears stung Emily's eyes. She held him, realizing that this wasn't just about her anymore. Walking away meant breaking a little boy's heart, and maybe breaking her own too. Meanwhile, inside the skyscraper, Alex plotted a bold move. He knew fighting the board with anger wasn't enough. He needed to change the narrative. He needed to show the world that Emily's work wasn't scandal, it was salvation. Within a week, he orchestrated a press event at the incubator. Cameras from CNN, the New York Times, even skeptical business outlets filled the modest hall. Emily, terrified but resolute, stood before them. She didn't speak about Alex. She didn't defend herself against rumors. Instead, she introduced teenagers who had built apps to connect local farmers with urban markets, veterans learning digital skills for new careers, single mothers coding websites at night. "These aren't scandals," Emily declared, her voice steady, her eyes fierce. "These are futures, and if this company wants to be remembered, let it be remembered for lives changed, not for gossip printed." The applause was thunderous. Reporters hungry for drama found themselves writing about something else, the raw power of a young woman's determination. Still, the board remained restless. Behind closed doors, whispers of ousting Alex grew louder. Victor Stanton led the charge. "He's compromised. He's reckless. He's blinded by her," but Alex anticipated their move. In the next shareholders' meeting, he presented data Emily had painstakingly compiled. Measurable impacts of the incubator. Reduced youth unemployment rates, increased digital literacy, new startup registrations. "These results," Alex said, pointing to the screen, came from one intern's vision. "Imagine what we could achieve if this company embraced change instead of fearing it." A hush swept over the massive hall. For the first time, investors weren't just looking at Alex. They were looking at Emily, seated quietly in the front row, her chin raised, eyes shining, and they were impressed. Weeks passed. The storm didn't vanish, but it shifted. Articles that once called Emily a gold digger now called her a rising star of corporate social innovation. Some still sneered, some still doubted, but the tide was turning. One crisp spring morning, Alex showed up unannounced at Diana's salon. He looked strangely nervous, carrying not flowers or gifts, but a manila folder. "Emily," he said, handing it to her, "this is for you." Inside were official papers, a proposal to make the incubator a permanent foundation, independent from Hayes Global with Emily as its director. Funding secured, governance structured, legal protections in place. "You won't be my employee anymore," Alex explained. "No board, no rumors, no strings. Just your work. Your dream." Emily stared at the papers, stunned. "Why would you do this?" Alex's gaze softened. "Because loving someone means protecting who they are, not controlling them. You don't belong in my shadow, Emily. You deserve your own light." Her hands trembled as she closed the folder. For the first time, she saw not the billionaire CEO, not the man scarred by betrayal, but someone willing to sacrifice power for love. And in that moment, her decision crystallized. Months later, the foundation's headquarters opened in Brooklyn. Children cut the ribbon, cameras flashed, and Emily Carter, now executive director, stood at the center, no longer invisible, no longer underestimated. At the edge of the stage, Ethan waved proudly, while Alex stood behind him, quieter than usual, his pride hidden in a small smile. When the speeches ended, when the crowd dispersed, Emily walked toward them. Ethan rushed forward, hugging her waist. "You did it," he cried. Emily knelt, hugging him back. "No," she whispered. "We did it." Her eyes met Alex's over Ethan's head. There were no words, but there didn't need to be. Their journey had been messy, painful, almost impossible. But from humiliation had come strength, from betrayal had come hope, and from doubt had come love. Not the fairy tale kind, not the easy kind, but the kind worth fighting for. And as the spring sun broke through the clouds, Emily finally felt it. Not fear, not shame, not uncertainty. Freedom.